Welcome back to the Infinite Jungle. On today's episode, I have with me Mirko, the CEO and co-founder of Staking Rewards. Thank you so much, Mirko, for being on the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you about some of the latest stats and data about how the staking industry is growing, Ethereum's role in it, and even Bitcoin's role in the staking ecosystem. But before we begin with the show, as listeners probably know by now, we are going to do a quick show disclaimer. I need to remind you to please refer to the disclaimer linked in the podcast show notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice, an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. So, Mirko, I thought for the start of this episode and just to set the stage for this conversation, we should talk a little bit about how the staking ecosystem has grown over the past year. Can you share some high-level stats about the growth of the staking industry? Maybe a little bit about users or activity or value that you've seen. I think since Ethereum became a proof-of-stake blockchain, obviously it's been probably a little bit of a wild increase in growth, but there's also been a lot of negative kind of activity, like DeFi, TVL has been down, and on-chain activity hasn't been as high, at least on Ethereum. So curious to know how the staking side of things look. How has the industry been growing this past year?
Yeah, definitely. So I had a look actually before the show, and the total aggregated staking market cap, or like the total value staked over the last year, has grown from $90 billion to $300 billion from like September to September.
That's a huge growth.
Yeah, that's a lot actually. I was surprised myself, but obviously, like there was a big run up towards the end of last year and beginning of this year, and even Ethereum, like the staking ratio, has grown by like 7% over the last year. It's now at like 28.6%. So it was last September just at 21% or something. Interestingly, like the staking ratio from Solana has decreased around the same amount by like 6% over the last 365 days. So it's now at 66%, down from like 70 something percent. But obviously, Solana has performed much, much better on the price side. They increased by like 700% like year over year, and Ethereum increased just by 65% around. So interestingly, the staking market cap, or how much is being staked from Solana and Ethereum, doesn't even diverge that much anymore. Even though Ethereum has grown a lot. So its staking market cap at Ethereum is now 91 billion and in Solana 60 billion, which actually Ethereum is still the biggest proof of stake network by like economic security. Interestingly, though, Solana pays out much, much more rewards because the reward rate sits at like almost 7%, and in Ethereum just by 3.5% around.
And is inflation a lot higher on Solana because of how much it issues?
Exactly, yeah. So inflation is higher, but it makes the staking market bigger on Solana already today because they pay out 4.2 billion in rewards per year, and on Ethereum it's just 3.2 billion around per year. So overall, validators and stakers are earning more on Solana than on Ethereum. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And as a little bit of context to our listeners, Staking Rewards, which we'll link to in the show notes, has a wonderful, wonderful, I would say, like UX page, just overview of all of the proof of stake chains, the rewards you can get, the staking rate, all these different like variables about what you should know that's important when deciding or I guess when getting a lay of the land for the staking ecosystem on top of these various chains. I think it's a great tool. I've used it quite a bit, especially during my research, looking into various proof of stake chains. Curious to know, since your website does convert, I would say, many users from just looking at proof of stake and then being able to actually stake. It's a great tool where you might look into the website, learn a little bit more about these proof of stake chains, but then be able to easily choose a provider or actually start earning and getting involved in the staking activity, and earning staking rewards. Mirko, what have you noticed is what users care kind of the most about when deciding which blockchains to stake on? Because obviously, you mentioned the rewards are a lot higher on Solana, and I would imagine that rewards are probably the biggest, possibly the biggest factor. But there may be other things related to this because there's some chains that might offer like I don't know, like 1000% APR on your stake, like tokens, but they're like very small, or they
Yeah.
don't have a lot of TVL, or maybe the security is not that high. I mean, so much of the proof of stake chains are now delegated proof of stake. You have to give it to a provider, especially on ETH too. What would you say are the biggest factors influencing user decisions on your website?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely the chains that have like, yeah, crazy high APY, but they're more being perceived as like pretty scammy as well, right? So I think there's this equilibrium between, yeah, you want to have like high rewards to incentivize people to stake, but also it shouldn't be too high. Otherwise, it looks pretty scammy already. So I guess the threshold is somewhere at like maybe 20%. If you pay more than 20%, it starts to look a little bit scammy already. So this is usually something I guess our users are actually looking for as well, right? They want high APY, but it shouldn't be too high. Otherwise, it's kind of suspicious. Um, but I mean, maybe to bring things back a little bit, obviously, like before anyone starts, like, yeah, to decide to stake an asset, it's like always a matter of like what are the fundamentals of the asset, because staking, I think, is just a way to yeah, kind of increase your exposure on an asset that you're long already. So it wouldn't make sense just to buy an asset only for the purpose of staking. It always, yeah, just makes sense. You buy the asset because you believe in it, and then you stake it because you believe in it even more, basically. Um, so that's how I would see it, and it's more a question of like, okay, what are the different staking opportunities that I have to make the most out of my investment when I'm long already? I want to invest long term, so I want to get the most out of it. And then they have different options between native staking and liquid staking, for example. So this is usually like a big decision factor for our users, and that's why we also track like the different opportunities from like native staking, liquid staking, running a validator yourself, and then there are like for the LSTs, there are DeFi opportunities as well. So we try to track the whole yeah, decision making process for the user and give them all the data and tools at hand to make a good decision whether to, yeah, native stake, liquid stake, open a DeFi position, and so on. And yeah, the other thing is, yeah, there are differences between the user groups. There's like retail and institutions, and I guess retail is looking much more into, yeah, the incentive side and like, yeah, short term kind of what are points, what is the hype right now, where's the narrative on the market, and institutions are way more looking into secure and reliable staking opportunities where they don't have to, yeah, worry much about the short term hype.
And in terms of the user experience for someone who is already long an asset and wants to start earning rewards on it or become even more long, start contributing to the security of that protocol, what would you say are some of the biggest mm, challenges to UX? What are some long term or maybe even development milestones for the Staking Rewards website that is on your mind, products that you'd like to build to improve the user experience on Staking Rewards? You had mentioned that there's different types of users like retail and institutions. I'm wondering if in particular there's kind of efforts you guys are making to particularly attract the institutional type of stakers, because I'm under the impression that staking rewards is perhaps a little bit more retail leaning, but I could be wrong on that. So curious to know like some of those products or projects that you guys are working on to make some improvements to staking UX.
Yeah, I guess it's like we are more like somewhere in the middle, I would say, between retail and institution. It's not as like, yeah, black and white, obviously, and there's a lot of institutions who look at our like data as well. Maybe they take more time to make staking decisions, but it's definitely a reference for them. And then the people that make actual staking decisions on our side and then go into stake are probably large token holders that are looking to stake larger amounts basically. And for them, we are trying to group these different users and see what is the best experience on our website. And optimally, it would look like something. Okay, the user just come to our site and they can get their profile scanned, or they can fill in some information and then get like the perfect staking opportunity at hand that we can recommend them, because we are fully independent and we don't have any bias towards a specific staking provider or protocol or something. So we're always looking for the best opportunity for the user. And I think this is where we can add a lot of value. So we try to cover a wide range of staking opportunities and give the optionality to the user, or even recommend options based on their specific profile. So that's something how we're looking like over the next few months and years, how we can really improve the staking UX. I think is giving our users, based on their individual like risk reward profile, giving them the right staking opportunities at hand that make the most sense for them.
Gotcha. And are you thinking of using certain types of AI to help inform those recommendations to users based on their profile? Or are you thinking of like building out more of like a custom kind of, I don't know, like login page, or perhaps like paywall service on staking rewards?
Yeah, like we can definitely like we've been looking into AI, but I think it's still like very early on it as well. And for now, I think the low hanging fruits are just to create user profiles and have them like configure the experience on the website by themselves. So if they're a liquid staker on Ethereum, they are most likely also a liquid staker on Solana. So this is already something where we can customize the website experience to their own individual needs. And if they're a native staker on one chain, they may also want rather native stake on another chain. So these patterns emerge, and then we can see what makes sense for them, or what they're looking for.
That makes sense. Yeah, I got to say, I'm glad that you also highlighted how institutions do use staking rewards as a data source, if not for actually being able to stake through the website. Because I 100% agree. I've used staking rewards a ton just to get references of like what the high level stats are on these various proof of stake chains. Because you guys have so much, you surface so many of them, even the smaller ones. It's a really good source of data. So yeah, thank you for your guys' service and making that data free and public. Um, the other thing that I wanted to talk with you about, aside from developments with staking rewards and also in changes of the staking ecosystem, is particularly the advent of staking on Bitcoin, with the explosion of kind of innovation that's been happening on Bitcoin right now, with different L2s, different roll-ups, lots of different projects launching on Bitcoin to give it programmability. I'm under the impression, and I know that Staking Rewards has hosted very recently the Bitcoin Staking Summit. To confirm, that was the first Bitcoin Staking Summit that you guys have organized. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's we host like one event per year. It's the staking summit once a year. We host it again in Bangkok in November this year, and it's kind of our main event of the year. And now for the first time, we had something outside of that as a small event, which was a Bitcoin staking forum. And we had like a full afternoon dedicated just around Bitcoin staking, which was very exciting to see. Also, I personally learned a lot bringing all the projects together, because somehow this space has emerged over the last year out of nothing almost. And it's really, really fascinating to see that there's so many projects building around Bitcoin staking now, which felt almost unimaginable 1 year ago.
Yeah, I would say I too have been very impressed by how much that narrative around Bitcoin has grown, because I was under the impression that many people in the Bitcoin ecosystem were apprehensive towards making Bitcoin a lot more programmable. Um, Based on that summit that you guys had, what would you say was your biggest takeaway about the Bitcoin staking industry? its
Yeah,
budding industry.
yeah, I think before we had the event, I was still under the impression like everything, like all the BTC fi, everything is going to happen on Ethereum, because I think Ethereum is the strongest like computational decentralized platform and network, and it has the highest network effects and everything. But at the event, I learned that there are a lot of projects that 100% believe like in building on top of Bitcoin purely, and they don't even care about bringing it to Ethereum. They just want to like build on top of Bitcoin and then have sovereign rollups that are only settling on Bitcoin, or like even build on Bitcoin native, which was very new to me as well, because this feels like even even more early, and it's not even possible yet, somehow, right? We are still waiting for the like this OP-CAT upgrade on the Bitcoin Core protocol, before you can even build rollups on Bitcoin. But there are a lot of projects that do believe in this vision forward, and they are kind of streamlining all the efforts to not to like, some of them are building on Ethereum right now, but ultimately they believe in building on Bitcoin. And that was also pretty new to me, actually, how many projects there are already that are seriously streamlining all the efforts into that direction.
Now, I'm fascinated by that because I'm under the impression it's very difficult to build smart contracts on Bitcoin. And like you said, the solutions that exist today are very experimental. Many of these rollups haven't launched. They rely on changes to the core Bitcoin protocol, which, as we know, is so difficult. I mean, Bitcoin very rarely upgrades, if at all. And that's part of its value proposition, that it's sound money, it's hard money, it doesn't change. The kind of upgrades that Bitcoin has is all backwards compatible upgrades. So it's limited because Bitcoin, the ethos of Bitcoin is that they only do backwards compatible upgrades. It limits how much the protocol can change. So I foresee that many of these Bitcoin developers that are very excited about building things on Bitcoin, eventually they're going to get frustrated with how limited they are and how slow moving the governance is on Bitcoin, and they'll eventually just go to Ethereum or Solana. Would you disagree with that? I mean, I to some extent feel like it's almost like a fantasy, like a dream almost, to think that there could be a vibrant Web3 ecosystem on top of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is not built for that, nor will it ever be built for, or like ever, reach the level of usability as these other general purpose blockchains.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's going to be really, really tough, and I'm also a big believer in Ethereum in the network. So I think ultimately, like Ethereum has such a strong network effect, it's going to be really hard for Bitcoin to compete there. On the other hand, like BTC as an asset is so strong, and makes such a perfect stakeable asset, that could also be used in any ecosystem, really. So I think the solution probably lies in the middle. Like we have to find a trustless bridge from BTC into the Ethereum network, or somehow like bring those ecosystems closer together. So um, that's where I would also say like my dream scenario would be like BTC the asset and Ethereum the network merging at some point. Because it's like it seems like a perfect match. You have like the biggest network in the world and the biggest asset in the world, like crypto asset and crypto network, and they would make a perfect match if they would come together, I think.
Well, one of the key things that I'd like to highlight about that is WBTC. Wrapped BTC was kind of the OG way in which Bitcoin as an asset could be used as collateral in the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem, could start to be exported to these other chains. Now there seems to be even new, more experimental projects working on enabling the asset Bitcoin, which is secured by the network of Bitcoin, to be able to secure and to be able to participate in other chains. And one of the projects that I know you highlighted in at the Bitcoin Staking Summit and in your talk at the summit was the Babylon project. Can you talk a little bit more about the trust assumptions that are associated with Babylon? Is it really designed or like envisioned to be the trustless bridge that allows people to trustlessly like stake Bitcoin to other chains? Because as we know, I mean, as I hope one of the things our listeners should know is that wrap Bitcoin and being able to bridge, I guess, Bitcoin to other chains, wrap Bitcoin relies on these trusted custodians. Like when it comes to minting and issuance and burning, it relies on these like trusted entities. So I'm curious to know like what kind of innovations are happening via the Babylon project. You had mentioned it in your talk, and I was
Yeah. So
curious to know
what
more.
Babylon does basically, like they have two different protocols. One is a staking protocol, and one is a timestamping protocol. And for now, they launched the staking protocol, which is basically like an existing staking protocol on the Bitcoin blockchain now. They use the Bitcoin scripting language, and you create this non-custodial vault basically, where you send your own BTC to a non-custodial vault, which is a UTXO. Um, and there it can be staked basically. And then they use a timestamping protocol, which is connected to the Babylon chain, which is a Cosmos chain, which can then bridge the BTC security from the non-custodial vault or self-custodial vault on the Bitcoin blockchain into the proof of stake ecosystem of proof of stake chains, in order to secure them basically. Like there are trust assumptions around it, I think, but it's more or less it's definitely less trusted than wrapped Bitcoin, for example, which is dependent on the custodians, where for the timestamping protocol it would be secured by a set of validators. But yeah, I'm not claiming to be the best person to 100% say exactly what the trust assumptions are there. And I think even for trust minimized system or like trustless system, in the end you still have to trust it, right? Even and there's also other solutions like TBTC from the Threshold team. They're also building a more or less decentralized bridge for BTC. So I think these solutions are amazing, and I'm really looking forward to see them emerge, and also see for the Babylon timestamping protocol to go live, and then have a better understanding of how it actually works, how it plays out, and if this is also solving concerns around the trust assumptions that, for example, Rep Bitcoin has.
Totally. That's so right. I mean, I think that a lot of it still remains to be seen, and it'll be interesting to see how these different projects that are just budding play out. And I got to say, it's the same dynamic, I think, with ETH and Ethereum, because right now there's these experimental solutions to try and export ETH, the decentralized native asset of Ethereum, and allow ETH to secure these other protocols and export ETH to these other chains. But as we know, these restaking protocols like Eigenlayer and a few others that are being built on Ethereum, they are very much in their nascent stages. There's a lot of trust assumptions related to them. And it's not clear exactly how they'll play out, how the risks and the rewards for restaking will play out. So it's interesting that as obviously the Bitcoin smart contract ecosystem is very nascent. This idea of exporting Bitcoin to secure other chains, it's actually very like Ethereum too, in that sense, is very in a very similar stage of just figuring out how to do this type of activity of securing
Yeah.
other chains with its native asset in a trustless manner. So yeah, I think there will be a lot to learn from both ecosystems.
Yeah, I think ETH just has a competitive advantage over BTC here because it's already native to the Ethereum blockchain, right? So there's no trust assumptions of like using ETH to like secure an AVS, which is also built as a set of Ethereum smart contracts, for example, or like even as a layer two. So a lot of the trust assumptions there are not as serious as with BTC, right? Because BTC doesn't have this bridge yet. And all the AVSs, they're going to be built like with Babylon, for example, in the Cosmos ecosystem, or like with Eigenlayer and Symbiotic, they're going to be built in the Ethereum ecosystem. So ETH is native to these ecosystems, and there are no trust assumptions to use it or like to funnel it into the AVSs as security.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more flexibility and, like, room to play, definitely, because Ethereum, yeah, is so much more programmable, has so many yeah, it doesn't require as many trust assumptions because you can build functionalities directly as smart contracts on Ethereum. Yeah, I totally agree. I guess one kind of final question, as we look ahead to how the staking ecosystem will mature and grow. We talked about, the growth in its value. We talked about this, budding ecosystem on top of Bitcoin. Are there particular predictions that you have about the way that this staking industry will grow over the forthcoming year? I know we're still kind of in the fall of 2024, but we've got some major kind of developer events that are going to be coming up at the end of the year in November with DevCon at Ethereum. But also next year, there's going to be quite a bit of protocols, different protocols that will be launching, maturity of restaking protocols. As we look ahead to these kinds of events, any kind of developments or predictions that you have about how the staking ecosystem will grow over the next year?
Yeah, so obviously there's so many things going on with restaking and Bitcoin staking being like very hot narratives, and I think they will definitely continue because they're also just getting started, right? Eigenlayer is just starting to fully emerge as well with rewards and slashing happening, and symbiotic is coming up and challenging the whole thing with allowing more assets to be restaked, and I think probably one of the maybe if I could make a prediction, one of the things that I would think is still underexplored is the restaking of stablecoins, which I think makes a lot of sense because USDC is one of the biggest assets as well, USDT too, and they're very stable. So if you're an AVS or any network or service, then uh, you have to think, which collateral do you accept? So, I think stable coins look like a perfect collateral to restake as well, compared to ETH, for example. So, I think that could be really interesting, and maybe surprising as well, in terms of the restaking space. And then we have a new player of stable coins there as well. And obviously Bitcoin as well. I think, it's going to be exciting to see the whole Babylon, the full vision of Babylon, to realize with the timestamping protocol. And I know there are already projects also committed to use BTC as security. So it's going to be really interesting to see the yields that can be generated with it, and which protocol of the restaking protocols can pay out good yields. I think it will be a fight for paying out good yields and getting projects to build on it, and maybe it will be all abstracted away even more with aggregation layers that use a little bit of ETH, BTC, and USDC or something like that. So I guess there will be a lot happening, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to. And I really appreciate your insights on just the broader developments happening in the staking ecosystem, because on this show, I try and get an update on Ethereum's staking ecosystem and the staking industry on top of Ethereum, which is still big, but there are very specific issues related to Ethereum staking. You mentioned kind of like the growth of liquid staking, and specifically, the centralization with Lido is such a big concern. But I think this is probably one of the first episodes on the show where we talked about the staking industry more broadly, just in crypto, like not tethered to Ethereum, though Ethereum is a big part, but different developments happening on the L2s, like you said, and Bitcoin. And it's nice. I appreciate, just the insights on everything else that's going on with staking. So
Yeah, it's great to have a premiere here. Maybe one other thing on the Ethereum ecosystem, just obviously what's also going to be very, very interesting, I think, the whole discussion around profitability of validators and for home stakers especially. So I think it's very important as well to find specialized incentives for home staking as well. And I really wish, I know it's a very hard problem, but I would really wish we find some more innovation also in terms of how can we categorize incentives, because not every validation has the same type of value. Like if someone validates from home, it has much higher value than someone that validates from the cloud or in an industrialized way. So if you can find ways to really be a bit more smart on how incentives are structured and don't just pay everyone the same amount, I think that's something that would be really worthwhile to explore, especially for the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm very excited for any efforts that emerged out of this, because I think it's a way to go. That um, it shouldn't be the same amount of yield just based on the ETH. It should be different based on how the yield, or like how the validation is done as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a huge topic, and I really do think that's one of the most pressing, I would say, conversations happening right now in the Ethereum staking, in the Ethereum staking world. Thank you, Mirko, for coming onto the show, and thank you, everyone who is listening to this episode of Infinite Jungle. We hope that you learned something new about Ethereum and also about the crypto staking industry at large. We hope that you have a great week. Please tune in again for another episode of The Infinite Jungle. In your explorations of the infinite jungle that is Ethereum, stay safe out there.